From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Argentina's President Mauricio Macri says that the International Monetary Fund has agreed to an early release of bailout funds. The $50 billion loan request came as uncertainty over inflation has grown in the last few months. The country has been struggling with an economic crisis. Argentina's peso dropped a further 7.6% during the day, taking the total loss this year to over 45% against the US dollar. The announcement came after Macri made a request for an advance with the fund in light of what he says was an uncertain future for the country. A part of the IMF loan is to be allocated to support the budget and the rest to the country's central bank to stabilize the value of the peso. $50 billion from the loan has already been released.
I want to announce that we have agreed with the International Monetary Fund to advance all the necessary funds to guarantee compliance with the financial program next year. This decision aims to eliminate any uncertainty that might have arisen around the worsening of the international context.
Inflation in Argentina is projected to surpass 30% by the end of the year. Investors fear the government may not be able to repay the heavy loan and could default. Critics say the deal means further austerity policies will be put into motion, affecting the most vulnerable.
If we had to go to the IMF, it was because there wasn't any trust. This is a financial bet, and we already went through this, and those who lost the most were the poor. But this is not the crisis year of 2001. If we didn't have the subsidies given by former President Cristina Kirchners, we would all be on the street fighting and shooting each other.
And staying in Argentina, today marks the second day of a three-day strike called by teachers in Buenos Aires. Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban is there and has the details.
It's the second day of the 72-hour strike called by the teachers in Buenos Aires. They are rejecting a lack of response from Governor Maria Eugenia Vidal. 14 meetings have been held and various strikes, but there is no way out of these difficulties for public education. Tomorrow will mark the third day of strikes, where protesters will march from the Congress to the Ministry of Education. They are demanding a salary increase and also emphasizing the difficulties for public schools in Argentina right now. Some days ago, the explosion of gas leak caused the death of 2 public school workers due to the lack of maintenance. The situation has caused outrage in the public education sector.
Thank you, Edgardo, for your information. And former Argentinian President Cristina Fernandez de Kirchners says her presidential sash was seized during police raids on her home. Fernandez de Kirchners says the sash belonging to her late husband, Néstor Kirchner, was seized as well. She has called the act an absolute violation of her rights. On Friday, she accused Judge Claudio Bonadio of an abuse of power because he didn't allow her lawyer to be present during the raids. And still in Argentina, social and political organizations have rejected a request to set up U.S. military bases in the country.
The possibility of establishing U.S. military bases in Argentina is causing concern. Humanitarian aid is the excuse behind the arrival of the U.S. Southern Command into strategic countries with massive natural resources such as Argentina.
They want to steal our natural resources because for them and for the Argentine oligarchy, our natural resources belong to the United States.
We are not surprised. This is a part of a political strategy supported by Macri's government. All they want to do is to hand over Argentina's sovereignty and economy. We are concerned by the presence of the U.S. military in our country.
The presence of U.S. military forces must be approved by Congress. It's something to keep in mind.
There is a possibility where U.S. bases could be installed in an area close to Antarctica, even though no foreign military base can settle in the Argentine territory without congressional approval.
A base in Ushuaia, near Antarctica, could jeopardize the largest freshwater reserve in the world, as well as a great variety of minerals and hydrocarbons, which cannot be exploited yet. However, in the year 2041, this protective law ends and there are agreements to extend it. But there is enormous pressure from the United States to stop these accords.
Establishing military bases in the country to ensure geopolitical control over the region and have access to natural resources such as water, oil, biodiversity, and minerals are the main objectives.
The people in power has given away our sovereignty due to lack of capacity. This is all part of the plan. They want to take what we have achieved, especially regarding the Malvinas. UNASUR is falling apart. We are almost out of the Mercosur. They blame Venezuela for everything. These are political groups encrusted in Latin America. We will not only lose the Malvinas, but Antarctica and the Patagonia as well.
Since May 2018, U.S. armed forces have been patrolling all over the country. They also announced they will provide supersonic aircrafts, radars, and equipment to protect the heads of state of the G20 summit, which will take place in Buenos Aires between November and December.
At least 12 students have been arrested after an unauthorized demonstration in Chile. Clashes erupted when the security forces tried to dissolve the march. Students are rejecting the youth employment bill proposed by the government. They say it threatens basic workers' rights in favor of employers. And 2 priests have been suspended from the Chilean church accused of sexual abuse. The decision comes after the church investigated the case and confirmed the abuses. So far, 72 people linked to the church are under investigation. More than 100 victims have been identified so far. Most of them were underage at the time when the crimes were committed. And to Colombia now, where the debate on the implementation of the peace agreement continues. Now the victims of the internal conflict are fighting to be represented in Congress. More details in this report.
Senate has resumed the debate to approve the special constituencies included in the peace accord between the national government and the FARC. These constituencies are aimed to give a voice to the victims of the armed conflict in the legislative branch.
These constituencies are a way for underrepresented sectors to take part in Congress. Campesinos, indigenous people, and Afro-descendants have been the most excluded communities in the country.
Congress presented this project and debated it through fast track, a mechanism that was used as a measure to expedite the implementation of the peace agreement. But those opposed to the peace process endeared the approval of the constituencies. For many, reopening this debate gives hope.
We think that it is a minimum that can be guaranteed after all the victims had suffered. We have insisted that the bill wasn't filed. The Constitutional Court has reaffirmed the thesis of what we have been defending.
According to the Alternative Revolutionary Force of the Commons Party, or FARC, a political maneuver tried to prevent the victims from having a seat in Congress. They say the last Constitutional Court ruling validates the bill on special constituencies.
According to the Congress Secretary, there's a vote missing to reach quorum, necessary to pass this reform to be. However, the State Council and the Constitutional Court itself, in a recent ruling, recognized that there was the necessary number of votes, not only for this bill, but for others regarding the implementation of the peace agreement.
The special constituencies will allow the victims to have a voice and vote in capital. They will also be able to manage resources for the region and to work for a social equality in their territories. This is why congressmen supporting peace assure that they will fight for its approval.
Bolivia and Spain have signed an agreement for the construction and funding of the train that will connect Bolivia with Peru and Brazil. Spanish Prime Minister has met Bolivian President Evo Morales to sign a memorandum for the proposed Bi-Oceanic Central Railway. The two countries have also signed new agreements on economic cooperation and justice. Sanchez is the first Spanish Prime Minister to visit Bolivia in over 20 years.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has said the project of the Bi-Oceanic train boosted by Bolivia is of great importance. Spain will contribute after signing an agreement with Bolivia, and now Spanish companies will participate in its building and funding. Sanchez said this is a multi-million project, as it will require between $10 and $14,000 million to connect over 3,700 kilometers. The train will connect the Brazilian port of Santos at the Atlantic Ocean with the Peruvian port of Ilo at the Pacific. During his visit to Bolivia, Spanish Prime Minister also supported Evo Morales' proposal that the CELAC EU summit is held in Bolivia next year. Both countries also signed a cooperation agreement for the upcoming 4 years. A third agreement on justice and human rights is on the agenda as well. Sanchez is in the middle of his Latin America tour. His next destination is Colombia.
Thank you, Freddie, for your report. And economists are hailing Bolivia as an example to other developing nations on how to boost their economies. The Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean pinpoints specific steps Bolivia has taken. More details in this report.
The Minister of the Economy, Mario Guillén, highlighted a recent CEPAL release which instructs developing nations in how to bolster internal economic growth.
This is what we have been doing the last 12 years, and just now the CEPAL and other countries are realizing that formula for growth. CEPAL's advice is not to focus on exportations but public investment, infrastructure, salary increase and local demand.
Additionally, the economic report reviewed the growth projections for the region, putting Bolivia in second place this year.
CEPAL has established a review of a forecast made in December. They predicted that we were going to grow 4%, but now it is at 4.3%. With this new figure, we are the second highest growing economy in South America behind Paraguay.
In the last 3 years, Bolivia has found itself leading economic growth in the region and maintains a good position above the average forecast for the continent. That will be 1.2% this year, according to CEPAL.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Kiedy pan minister opracuje normy zanieczyszczeń dla środowiska odnośnie zanieczyszczeń gazowych?
Ja chcę czyste powietrze, żeby nie śmierdziało, żeby moja wnusia żyła w czystym powietrzu, zdrowo, tak? Żeby mogła żyć naprawdę zgodnie z przyrodą.
Telesur Documentaries presents Big Business, Negligent Conditions Behind the Food Industry and the Indifference of Authorities. Sunday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Mexico's new Congress has been sworn in. A new legislature begins after a landslide election win by President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador. AMLO's left-wing Morena party has announced an austerity plan for the new Congress. This comes after it was reported that every congressman has on average 30 staff members working for them. Morena's party won 246 out of the 628 Congress seats. And Mexican President Enrique Pena Nieto has insisted on defending the official version on the case of the 43 disappeared students from Ayotzinapa. Pena Nieto says the evidence is clear, although it was dismissed by experts from the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Relatives want the disappearance to be clarified. According to authorities, the 43 students were burned by a criminal gang back in 2014, a version experts have denied.
I am convinced that what occurred was what the official investigation says. I know we will never be able to bring them back, but these events should never happen again.
And Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holmes wants parents to report when schools are overcharging tuition fees. There is universal primary and secondary education in Jamaica. However, some schools charge an auxiliary fee. Prime Minister Holmes said in a public meeting the fees are strictly optional.
So we removed the tuition fee. Parents, send your children to school. No school can turn back your child if they cannot afford the auxiliary fee.
And Russia and Dominica have entered into a visa waiver agreement. Citizens from both countries can now travel without visas for up to 90 days, according to Russian media. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit first floated the idea back in June 2017. Grenada and St. Kitts and Nevis signed a similar visa waiver agreement with Russia last year. The Venezuelan government has signed various agreements with local and international companies to boost their oil production. The agreements include investments of $430 million in 14 oil wells. President Nicolás Maduro said this initiative will expand and improve the nation's productive sector. Maduro also made a call to foreign investors to work in Venezuela.
We have signed the first 7 agreements out of 14 which are already approved. I'm also letting all international oil investors know that Venezuela is open to international investments in terms of oil production.
Fixed prices and a new currency are part of Venezuela's economic recovery plan. Business owners and citizens are steadily benefiting from these measures in their everyday lives.
This is a popular market in the middle of Caracas. What was once difficult to find is now accessible. Now people buy food at prices agreed upon between businesses and the government.
Our job is to make sure there is no speculation with the prices, that there are no shortages or hoarding of products.
Protection against speculation is only possible thanks to audit operations.
Let's hope they keep products on the shelves and maintain the fixed prices so we can finally overcome this giant issue we face every day.
The economic recovery plan is lauded by citizens like Henry Dudamel, who works to improve his community.
First of all, stop buying from black market sellers. Second, alert the police about the black market, which is asphyxiating our people. We have started to raise awareness about how we must protect our currency. We cannot allow any more buying and selling of cash. We now have all these measures to protect our economy, like the sovereign bolivar and the gold savings plan.
People like Henry say that Venezuela is a country with a mind and a future, and that solidarity must be the basis of this society.
Brazil is sending the army to the border with Venezuela. President Michel Temer has signed a decree to guarantee law and order in the northwestern state of Roraima. This decision comes after Venezuelan migrants have been attacked in the area for over the past month. Temer says the migration flow is threatening the entire continent.
We will seek the support of the international community to adopt firm diplomatic measures that solve this problem, which is no longer a matter of one country's internal policy, but crosses the borders of various countries and threatens the harmony of our entire continent.
And staying in Brazil, the Workers' Party has said it won't withdraw the presidential candidacy of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Vice presidential candidate Fernando Haddad says Lula is their only option. Haddad also reminded the people the United Nations has recommended that Lula be allowed to participate. He added that Lula has the support of the majority of Brazilians. In El Salvador, indigenous communities are fighting to preserve ancient lands. They say a presidential veto is not being respected.
2 decades ago, the Tacuchalco site was declared cultural property. Last year, the president used his veto power to preserve it. The site is now earmarked for housing development.
Our heritage should be respected. These lawmakers will be denying the Salvadoran people their own history, their own cultural heritage.
Construction work has already caused damage. The Ceniza River has also become polluted. It is a water source for nearby communities. Indigenous people want the state to buy the land. They say the company carrying out the project should also be fined.
We are urging the Culture Ministry to protect Tacuchalco.
They also want the site declared as Tacuchalco, sacred place for memory and ancestral identity.
The decree not only put Tacuchalco at risk, over 800 archaeological and historical sites are also in jeopardy.
Social movements say ancestral seeds should be planted on the land. They believe it's an appropriate location for museums and an indigenous Nahuatl language school.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. A young rape victim in Morocco has spoken out about her case. 12 people have since been arrested for kidnap, gang rape, and torture. The 17-year-old Khadija Akuru wrote online about the gang who held her captive for 2 months. She said the criminals burned her with cigarettes and carved tattoos into parts of her body, including a Nazi symbol. The testimony has triggered social media outrage and the hashtag #WeAreAllKhadija to fight the stigma of rape in the country. A Pakistani Islamist party has demanded the deportation of the Dutch ambassador over Prophet Muhammad cartoon competition. Thousands of protesters of the Tehreek Labik party joined together in Lahore to pressure the Prime Minister of Pakistan to sever diplomatic ties with the Netherlands over the contest. It accepts caricatures of Prophet Muhammad, which Islam forbids, and was organized by far-right Dutch politician Geert Wilders, known for such stunts. Germany is handing back human remains to Namibia from the genocide committed in the African country over 100 years ago. The remains belong to indigenous people slaughtered under the German colonial rule. A solemn church service has been held in Berlin to pay tribute to the victims, but descendants also want an official apology. Tens of thousands of Herero and Nama people were massacred between 1904 and 1908 after rebelling against their colonial overlords.
I bow down in the greatest sadness. I cannot undo the terrible wrongs our ancestors caused, but I beg you, from the bottom of my heart, to accept my apologies.
And Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa has appointed a team to investigate post-election violence. The commission will investigate the killing of 6 people by the army during a post-election protest last month. Findings are expected to be made public within 3 months. It was the first election in Zimbabwe since former President Robert Mugabe was ousted last year.
The terms of reference for the commission are as follows. A, to inquire into the circumstances leading to the 1st of August 2018 post-election violence. B, to identify the actors and their leaders, their motive and the strategies employed in the protests.
And the father of the modern steel pen, Elie Manet, has died. He was 91. Elie Manet was credited with refining and developing the instrument. The steel pen was created in Trinidad and Tobago. It is the only percussion instrument made in the 20th century. It was famously made from discarded oil drums. Manet was the first to sink the lid of the oil drum for the purpose of playing music. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.